now going to bring on Sam P.K. Collins, our district reporter here. Is Sam with us? Yeah, hey Sam.
Happy Friday. How y'all doing?
Doing fine, doing fine. How are you?
Can't complain. It's been a very eventful week. I'll say that. Um,
Yeah, we'll talk about that. I mean, how so? I mean, I know the council passed a bunch of bills on resolutions on Tuesday. Give us a rundown.
no problem. There were a bunch of resolutions, of course, that were passed on the consent agenda. Attorney Nkechi Taifa, congratulations to her. She has been reappointed to the Corrections Information Council. But the story that was the story of Tuesday during a 3 hour or so council meeting was the extension of the emergency juvenile curfew powers that MPD Chief Smith used earlier this year to create curfew zones. There was a lot of debate on the dais. DC Council Member Janice Lewis George of Ward 4, Brianne Nadeau of Ward 1, as well as Robert White and Trayon White at large in Ward 8, respectively, they voted against the extension, with Janice Lewis George being very adamant or just being concerned about with the federalization of the police force through the mayoral order, uh, that federal troops or federal officers will have more contact with youth without any repercussion. That was the concern.
Mhm.
And Christina Henderson, the at-large council member, even though she voted in support of the temporary extension, she, as well as Councilmember Trayon White and Councilmember Robert White, they were in search or questioning alternatives or just add-ons that the executive, that being the mayor's office, as well as the deputy mayor for public safety, Lindsay Appiah, add-ons that they can institutionalize to create more opportunities for youth to play outside or to have safe spaces. Christina Henderson even mentioned um, grants for groups doing the work outside. And one more event in the council that I did include in the Collins DC Council report this week concerned what council members Zachary Parker and Matt Fruman advanced with 7 other council members. So for those of y'all who recall, the so-called Big Beautiful Bill advanced earlier this year, and with that came changes in tax policy that are very detrimental to the district economy. So what the council did on an emergency basis was decouple the local tax policy from the federal tax policy, which is estimated to produce $650 million in revenue generation for the district. What Council Member Parker did and Matt Fruman did, what they did was create policy around where a portion of that would go towards the child tax credit. And now with that passage of the legislation, DC is a leader in allowing parents to have that tax credit around tax time. And we're talking about $1,000 in tax savings or tax refunds. So it's very pivotal what happened on Tuesday in the DC Council. Of course, there was a lot of talk around tax policy, around whether an elimination of a tax for seniors was definitely going to help the lowest of us. Uh, Beyond that, I wouldn't say not much else happened on Tuesday, but I will say that much of Tuesday's discussion centered around children and how best to help them.
Yeah, I noticed your headline, which I thought was really telling for the council report, is how are the children, and it this event at Navy Yard, which many have watched and questioned, what precipitated that, how did it end? You see a snapshot of a video, but that seemed to have precipitated this extension of uh, what do you call it?
The emergency juvenile curfew,
Girl,
and
exactly, right. And so what were people saying about that? I mean, was that sort of the straw that broke the camel's back, or was there other incidents or other things that have happened
that's a
that
beautiful
came into
question.
the conversation?
That's a beautiful question. A bit more context around that. So, um, that encounter between the youth at Navy Yard and the National Guard happened on Halloween night. which was on last Friday. The day before that, DC Councilmember Brooke Pinto conducted a public hearing about the curfew, and we saw about 50 or so public witnesses, from what I recall, who were on both sides. They produced nuanced views about it. Some were against it, some believed the curfew to be a solution, one of many solutions to tackle youth violence and to tackle youth being out in public spaces. But there's consensus to some degree that the curfew is necessary as long as it is brought on with additional resources for youth. Now, as far as what transpired on Friday, my understanding in reading reports from the DC police was that at certain times throughout the night, the youth were allowed to congregate in that public space. And at times, the police or the authorities in general, they did warn them against leaving certain spots or just acting raucously, if that's even a word. But at a certain point later on in the night, as the activity got more raucous and uh, got more passionate, for lack of a better word, that's when the National Guard stepped in. And one point I do want to bring up, just out of deference to members of our community who love the children a lot, I do want to note that a lot of these youth, they were detained, but charges were dropped for most of them. So that's an aspect of the reporting that often gets left out. In this country, at least on paper, you are innocent until proven guilty. So when we do write about youth and anybody else being detained, it's essential that we talk about the judicial outcome in that. So that itself raises questions of what the National Guard was doing that night, if they were there to incite violence or to oppress the youth or to encourage them through trolling to act out in a certain way. So it just leaves a lot of room. And one point I do want to bring up is that the Bowser administration did introduce last week, or the beginning of this week, they introduced permanent legislation that would allow for the juvenile curfew as it stands currently to not be an emergency power, but to be one that the mayor can use at any time she deems necessary.
And the other thing I think about is that when the curfew first a couple of years ago,
If I can bring up one more point just
yeah,
before, you don't mind.
go
So
ahead.
following the event on Halloween night, DC Mayor Bowser did announce a limited curfew that went on until Wednesday. So from November 1st up until the 5th, she had a limited curfew that extended the curfew hours quite a bit. My understanding was that um, it was limited in the sense that she was still within the bounds to do what she wanted to do, as far as, carving out time for youth to not be on the street. But at the very same time, the Bowser administration does want something stronger. That's why the emergency was advanced, as well as the permanent legislation.
Well, she keeps saying, that young people need to be held accountable, and you're right. I mean, I was in a conversation with a bunch of folks who thought back to their teen years, you know, 14, 15, 16, 17. And while we had curfews, but they were, parent home-based curfews, right? But it seems as though these curfews were set up in recent years to protect young people from the violence in the street, to protect them. Today, these curfews seem to be more to protect other people from young people. And the way that it's expressed, it sounds that way as well. In any of those, in that public forum, were there any young folks that testified that you are aware of?
Yes, there was a young brother who testified. He is a member of Guns Down Friday. Guns Down Friday being an organization that is immersed in the community. This young brother, he has to forgive me. His name definitely escapes me at the moment. Councilmember Kenyon McDuffie did mention this young brother's testimony during Tuesday's legislative meeting, and he spoke in recounting that testimony. The young brother spoke about losing 7 friends in his adolescent years. The young brother is still in high school, relative pretty young, and at this point in his life, he's lost 7 friends, the youngest of them being 11 years old. And he was in support of the curfew, but in giving his support, he said that that's not the end all be all. And I think that's the sentiment among a good number of DC residents from what I saw in the hearing. a bit more nuanced than what people those on the extreme sides of the situation are saying. But it appears that as time goes on, more people, particularly youth, are embracing to some degree the curfew. But there still remains the issue of what part do the federal agents play in this? With
Mm,
the federal agents being alongside MPD, and from what I learned, having access to radio and being able to descend at the scene of an alleged crime at any time, what factor do they play? Because DC residents or those who are encountered by the federal police officers, there are no accountability measures that they can tap into through MPD. They would have to go through the federal government. And given who's in the White House right now, we can only think about how futile that is. So that's still a concern that's just hovering over this whole issue. But there
mm.
does seem to be some consensus around the need for some type of curfew, along with activities and spaces, late night spaces where youth can gather.
Right, right, right. Which is one reason why, we celebrate the Boys and Girls Club over here on Mississippi Avenue that still has its midnight basketball program that goes on. But, there are not a lot of young people that go there, but it is a safe place and they provide food and all kinds of things. So I think part of what we'll be doing at the Informer is looking at some of those places and spaces that are opening up, if they are, for young people to go to. But it seems like every time there's a place, it gets shut down for some reason. So, and I don't need to say for some reason, but it gets shut down. We kind of know why certain things happen. This tax credit, I think, is interesting, and I don't know who pushed that piece of legislation.
Oh, that was Councilmember Zachary Parker, and the
Yeah.
legislation actually passed, but it wasn't funded, or I guess it wasn't included in the finalized FY26 budget. So Mayor Bowser did not include it in her proposal. And the council, for those who don't recall, given the district's precarious economic situation between losing revenue and between the continuing resolution situation earlier this year, the council had a long list of budgetary priorities that they were trying to tackle. And they had meetings among themselves as well as public hearings to try to decipher which ones could be included in the finalized budget and which ones couldn't. So the child tax credit didn't quite make the mark, as well as I would say healthcare restoration or changes to the healthcare eligibility requirements that were narrowed. So this was an opportunity on an emergency basis to make up for that just in time for tax season.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. Well, so we got to make sure that people know this when they're going to file their taxes. Hopefully, it'll be on the form, because normally, it's there, I guess, or would be there. That question, I guess, is it per child?
That's a great question. I'm not entirely clear on that. What I
Yeah.
can tell you though is that the office of the chief financial officer, as well as other entities within the DC government, do need time to prepare for that tax credit question
Hmm.
in the facilitation of those funds.
Wonderful. We'll be having the CFO on the show coming up soon, so that's one of the things we'll explore with him. But talking about legislation, I know that we wanted to talk, and we want to continue to talk about this ranked choice voting. Um,
Definitely.
so we're going to, even though residents of the District of Columbia voted for it in a referendum, people are still scratching their heads saying, "What is it? What do we have?" And so we want to make this like ranked choice voting 101 that we will stick with for a while. But what would you say to folks now about whether this is going to actually show up in June or not? And if so, what do folks need to know?
Well, it's been funded, that portion of I-83. Of course, the open primaries part, not so much, but we're focused on ranked choice voting. So the facilitation of that is totally up to, at this point, the Board of Elections. Advice I would have for residents in anticipation of the election season in 2026, please fill in all the bubbles. Because my understanding is that when you don't rank all of the candidates on the ballot, there is a likelihood that your ballot gets canceled out.
Whoa.
So, and like that was a concern among those who were against I-83.
Mm-hmm.
Just the confusion around how to tackle that. 'Cause they call those undervotes. So it's about just educating people around that. It varies state to state, but my research and my interviews point to that being a pressing concern, where folks who are not well versed on how to do ranked choice voting, when they just rank their favorite candidates and not everybody on the ballot, those votes are more likely to get um, pushed out. And that's not saying PK Collins talking; those are researchers talking, and that's testimony that I've gathered in the course of writing these stories.
So you're saying if you don't fill out a vote in every category, that your ballot could be discounted? It could be thrown out, the entire ballot? Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying. So in an instance, so let's say, for example, you have 5 candidates on the ballot, and through ranked choice voting, you go through different levels until the person gets 50% of the vote. It's incumbent upon the voter to fill out the entire ranked choice voting ballot. So out of those 5 candidates, you can't say, I'm going to rank this one first, this one second, this one third, and leave the other 2 blank. You
Mm.
got to rank all 5.
Wow. 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 Okay. All right. I mean, they're making voting,
You got
real,
to rank all 5.
real participatory. You have to participate all in, because there, and then, there's some, I don't know, this is what I was thinking you were saying at first, Sam, that, sometimes people know who they want for a particular seat, right? So I'm going to vote for mayor, but I don't know the people that are running for, let's say, at large, just to throw that out there.
Exactly.
So I'm just not even going to vote for them because I don't know who they are, but I might go down and vote for my council member. Is that going to affect your ballot?
Not to my knowledge. It,
Okay, so
it might affect that part that you didn't vote for, but not the entire ballot.
okay, all right. That's what I was trying to make sure that you weren't saying. That's why I thought I would bring that up. So, but if you do vote for, let's say, all those candidates that are running for mayor, you have to rank all of them,
That's my understanding. Yes,
or else that vote won't count either.
exactly. Because how the system works is that if by any chance your top choice is the lowest, if by any chance your top candidate accumulates the least votes, they get eliminated. Your vote then goes to the second place candidate on your ballot.
Mm-hmm.
And then that whole process repeats itself until one of the candidates accumulates 50% of the vote. So that's why automatically it's important for you to fill out the entire ballot, rank all of the candidates underneath that seat that they're running for.
Mm-hmm. And so, will this require more than one um, voting cycle? Let's say that's the other part I don't understand. If you vote, if election day is June the 12th, and now no one has that 50%. So do you have to go back to the polls and vote again?
Again, my understanding is that you would go through a cycle where people get eliminated in different rounds until the victor accumulates at least 50% of the vote.
Hmm.
So theoretically, all of that's supposed to be settled within that electoral cycle.
Okay.
So because as each person gets eliminated in each round, the field of candidates narrow. So you're going to get down to the last 2, and then between that, somebody's got to get more than 50%, hopefully.
Right, right. But does it is that and I know we're going to end up having the Board of Elections with us as well, assuming that this is going to be the case in June. We certainly want all of DC voters. We want to play our part, our role in making sure that all of DC voters know what they're going to face in June, and will know, not have questions like I do about how this is going to work. So I won't get too deep into the weeds right now, but I think that you've said enough to let people know that they need to pay attention to what's going to, not only the candidates, and briefly, I want to talk about that.
Yes,
Uh,
ma'am.
but not only the candidates, but how that election process is going to take place. But speaking of candidates for positions, it is filling up, like popcorn. Um, are you? Is that what you're seeing?
I am. So the war. Let's first of all, the mayoral race. DC Mayor Bowser hasn't quite hinted directly at whether she'll jump in for re-election, but Janice Lewis George, the Ward 4 council member, there are the Washington Post said that she told them that she was running. She hasn't quite said as much on record with Kojo Namdi and Tom Sherwood, but for now, among most of us in the press corps, it's safe to say that she's a candidate. There are also ruminations of at-large council member Kenyon McDuffie at least exploring the possibility of running. So those are the top three right now. As far as Ward One, um, we have Rashida Brown. First of all, for Ward One, for those who have been out the loop, Councilmember Brianne Nadeau, currently in her third term, she is not running for re-election. She has thrown her support behind Rashida Brown, an advisory neighborhood commissioner out of the Howard area and around what people call 640 on Georgia Avenue in DC. So she's coming out of that. There are other candidates. Aparna, I want to pull them up for y'all. There's at least two more I want to give y'all. Oh my goodness.
So let me ask you: has the time to get petitions and all of that? Is the Board of Elections putting those out now? Or are these just people that are just saying, or getting the word out that this is something that they want to do? I know I've seen some who already are beginning to campaign, but they don't become qualified candidates until they fulfill that signature.
Exactly. Right now, it's just campaign launches, sort of preemptive, but as we've seen throughout electoral history in DC, a lot of people have jumped into the ring very early.
Mhm.
Very
Okay.
early.
All right. Yeah. And then of
So
course,
also, uh, my apologies, just real quick, and you got to forgive me for the memory lapse, but we do have also, as announced as candidates, Brian Footer. He is a colleague of Ms. Brown on the ANC. We also have Terry Lynch, a longtime resident and activist. We have a tenant organizer, Aparna Raj, and we also have Jackie Reyes Yanez. She was the former director of the Mayor's Office of Latino Affairs. So that's what Ward 1 is looking like. Not much about Ward 5 and Ward 6 just yet. On the at-large side, as far as the Democratic Party is concerned, there are at least three people going for DC Councilmember Anita Bonds' seat. We
Mhm.
have Laniqua Dominique. Um, oh my God. Laniqua Dominique Jenkins, forgive me. She's running for the seat, as well as Shadow Representative Oye Owalewa. And last but not least, we got the Ward 4 Democrats President Candace. Such a brain fart today. Please forgive me. I'm not like this.
Well, I didn't prepare you to give names. It was just a number of folks that have jumped out in those races. But I mean, you give a shout out, so you can't stop now.
No doubt. Candace Tiana Nelson, you got to forgive me. You got to forgive me, Miss Nelson. Please forgive me. But Candace Tiana Nelson, Oye Owolewa, and Laniqua Dominique Jenkins, they count among at least three. We got some coming later on, most likely, but they are vying for the Democratic at-large council seat, which is currently held by Councilmember Anita Bonds. Now, Councilmember Bonds has not announced her intentions to run for re-election, but I was told by her office that she will likely be making an announcement toward the end of this calendar year.
Wow. Okay.
Okay.
All right. And then of course there's the congressional seats as well. And I know
Definitely.
they have put their names in the out there for Congresswoman Eleanor Holden's, to run, either replace her, run against her, whatever the term would be. So I think there are a couple of folks that are in the,
Quite a few. Quite a
yeah,
few. Quite a
yeah,
few. So of
yeah.
course you got your Robert Whites, Councilmember Robert Whites, Councilmember Brooke Pinto. Those are the big two, of course. Long before that, you had Advisory Neighborhood Commissioner Michael Kelly Williams, whose single member district is right by the informer. You have State Board President, at-large Representative Jacques Patterson, and you also have Kimon Freeman, who's running on the Green Party ticket once again.
Mm-hmm. Well, Sam, I hope you're taking your energy drinks because it's going to be a busy season. Not only from that, but just what's happening with the council. I want folks to know that the Collins DC Council report is a newsletter that you can sign up for. You'll be able to sign up on the website. Of course, go to the website and check out all of the um, stories that Sam will be filing each and every week to keep up to date on what's happening in our city, with our local government, our local elected officials. So I want to thank you for being with us. It was last minute, but I'm glad that you were able to jump on. And we're going to do this. We'll let the viewers know how regularly we're going to do this because, like you said, this was a busy week, but it's going to be a busy end of this year and the beginning of next year. I'm pretty sure. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.
All righty.